Hey, folks, welcome to the Hope Changes Everything podcast. This is episode number 4. We're really glad you're with us today. We've got with us Brianna Walker, who is the head of school at Southside Academy. And Brianna, thanks for coming again.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. The last time you were here, we were talking about the fact that sometimes it's more challenging than people think for kids from under-resourced households to be successful in school.
Yeah.
And it takes a higher level sometimes of community support and involvement for kids from that environment to be successful. And of course, we're talking in generalities, right? Because every kid is different. And we can all point to examples of kids that have been ultra successful, even though they've come out of a poverty environment. But it's true that there's a direct correlation between household income and academic success. And so we want to talk about today what kind of intervention is needed. Intervention might not be the right word even, but what kind of support do you think, what kind of things do our kids and our families need in order to be successful?
I think the word nowadays is the wraparound services. So you're hitting every piece of the child, and that will start with of course, the parents. You will need social and emotional support. You will need instructional support. You will need resources out for the community. So if there's a need for the family, maybe the school cannot actually provide them the services, but you have the connection and the partnership with someone that can help them in that manner. So whether it's financial literacy, we have self-help at Southside Academy. We can point them to that particular community. So I just think it's a wraparound service where whatever the need is, we may not have it in-house, but we have the connection and partnership to be able to lead them in the right direction. But far as in-house, we need volunteers, of course, those that are there consistency that can help out with instruction. Or if there's a high level of need of instruction, but there's also a high level of need of organization for our students. So if there's someone that can help out with administrative work, paperwork, bulletin boards, just different small things that make a difference in the inside of the classrooms or at the school would make a big difference. But overall, I would just say a wraparound approach for our families, our students, and honestly, our staff. With our staff, they need support just as much as the staff. Just as much as the students and the families, making sure that they have what they need and they're developed and they are well cared for.
Yeah. So let's break down wraparound real quick, because I'm not sure everybody knows what we're saying. I know one thing that's a big deal is mental health, right?
Yep.
It's because some of our kids come to school and they've experienced trauma and don't know how to process it.
Correct.
Or they might have some behavior issues that have gone undiagnosed, and they might actually need medication for one condition or another. And so far that hadn't been addressed. So that's one thing. But I think we found too, when you're talking about wraparound, sometimes the parent actually needs mental health support as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't they? Because living in a, low income environment, a lot of times is stressful. And, when you're dealing with those decisions about how do I put food on the table today? How do I keep the lights on? How am I going to pay gas to get to my doctor's appointment? Those kinds of things. A lot of people are in the position where they don't really have to think about that, right? But when you do, that's a lot more stress on you, and sometimes you need some help to
process it.
Yeah. Let's talk about tutoring and one-on-one intervention and small group intervention stuff, because a lot of people love to work with kids. They love kids in general, but when you say the word tutoring, they get all nervous, right? Because they're like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know what you're asking me to do. So put that person at ease. What makes a good volunteer for that?
specifically even for our foundational grades, which would be kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, I think repetition is a big, like for one, we provide the resources for you. So it's not like you have to create anything for yourself. But when you're talking about students being able to recognize a letter, that's repetition. When they're talking about figuring out the letter sounds, that's repetition. If you're trying to figure out or segment a word, that's repetition as well, long as it's all repetition. So I think for one thing that will be important for us to communicate out to the to the tutors that are interested in serving at Southside or at any school, a lot of it is repetition. And then once you get the hang of it, you begin to create your own aura within your small group, and you find your own space to really live it out and then make sure that our students are getting what they need. Another piece of it is consistency. Once you begin to come and you get the flow of interventions and you learn your students and you begin to build a relationship with them, a lot of those the anxiety or fear or even the hesitation behind tutoring will go out the window, because now you have a relationship with those students. And so it's easier to break down that wall of them, even you being intimidated as a teacher, or them not even wanting to communicate with you because you're a new face. So I think consistency, repetition, and then that's really it. I feel like repetition and consistency, and of course, do your own, research behind what it is that we're asking you to do. But that's not a requirement. It's just more so of, if you want to do it well, sometimes you have to put some work behind it. But
and sometimes kids just need somebody to read to, right?
Absolutely.
Or to read to them, both. That kind of thing. One thing that strikes me is kids that have been have experienced trauma. The research says the thing that helps them the most to be resilient and to move on in life and be successful and thrive is a relationship with at least one caring adult. Right? And so that's going back to what you were talking about consistency, because if I as a volunteer can come on a regular basis and I can build a relationship with the child. And, it takes time to build trust.
Yes.
And, if you're crossing racial barriers or you're crossing economic barriers, those kinds of things, sometimes you're not going to go from 0 to 100 on the trust scale in 2 days.
Right.
It's going to take a little while.
Yeah.
But if you get there, there's a huge reward on the other side of that, right? Because not only are you able, once you build that relationship, the child wants to perform well for you.
Absolutely.
They want to read well. They want to write well. They want to do their math well. So that's a win. But you're also an agent that God can use to bring healing in the child without you knowing it. You might not ever address the big hard thing that the child has gone through, but just the fact that you created a safe, caring, loving space for that child to be, is God can use that, right? And bring healing to that situation.
I agree. Yeah,
it's a big deal. So you would say, if you have got an interest in it, right?
Go for it. Yes, come on, sign up, volunteer. I definitely. We need the resources. I mean, we need people. We need people that love children. We need people that have a heart for kids in general. So I would say, if there's any interest of wanting to be a tutor or to serve or to support, walk alongside and partner with us, I think, I know we're ready for you. And it's just only a step away from you being a part of Southside Academy, or honestly just any school in general. So yeah.
Another part of continuing on with our conversation about wraparound services, it's the academic pieces, it's the mental health pieces. Sometimes it's practical material needs, right, that need to be met because the household doesn't have what it needs to be to thrive. We've had kids that didn't have appliances in their house. We had a kid at one point that had a huge hole in the floor in their living room, right? Those kinds of things that that just make it hard. But there's other areas too. A lot of times when we talk about parenting, if you haven't had a good parent,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard for you to be a good parent because you don't necessarily know what that even looks like,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes, we'll have a parent that comes and says, "Hey, I know I'm not where I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
I need help." That kind of thing. So, are there resources out there that can help, teach, how this is the way, this is a good way to interact with your child, in this kind
Yeah.
of situation, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. That's a big deal.
And I mean, honestly, I think it's more so of if a parent is open and receptive of that. Because sometimes it can feel like, the message is you don't know how to parent. It's just more so of like, I need guidance on what that looks like.
Right.
And yeah.
And two, part of wraparound is, and we spend some time on this, I think, at Southside is, and we do in Freedom School as well in the summer, is like skills that parents can use to help their kids academically.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you read to your kid?
Mm-hmm.
You would think, well, you just pick up the book and read it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can do that, and that's good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you stop at the end of every page and ask questions to
absolutely.
the kids, that kind of thing, that helps.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you say, hey, this is a big word,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about what this means, in the middle of it. All those kinds of things are help, but they might not come naturally to you.
Yeah.
So sometimes that training
is necessary.
Yeah. Anything else in wraparound that you can think of that?
Honestly, I mean, we haven't even hit it, but food and nutrition.
Yeah.
That's big.
It really is.
That's really big of just making sure that our children are receiving a balanced meal. That's extremely important of what our students are intaking and what they're putting in their bodies. And just making sure that they have something on a daily basis and it being balanced and something that will create an environment where they're not hungry, but also that they're not just putting anything in their body.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I tell you, it's so awesome to see the kids that you work with every day progress and go through changes, and not only like, hey, I've learned this skill that I didn't used to have, but also stuff like conflict resolution.
Absolutely.
And praying, and those kinds of things that they necessarily didn't know before. But now, instead of reaching out and hitting the kid that they get mad at, they go through these other steps that they've been taught, and this is a better way to handle it. That's really cool.
Yeah. I also think about too, I don't know what made me just think about this, but when we talk about volunteers and tutors, I actually have my oldest brother, he was a dropout. And so he did not finish high school or any of that. But I know even now that we talk about it, I think what would have helped him is if he had a male figure or just in general, like somebody there consistent, as we talked about before, but also was able to build a relationship with him to break down those barriers of what was going on, the wraparound service that we're talking about for mental health or just a positive, safe environment. So I just can now begin to make the connections of just like, tutors are needed, volunteers are needed, community is needed, partnership, all these things are needed. All the things, they're all needed to make sure that wherever our students turn, whether they're turning for food, turning for financial literacy, whether they're turning for relationships, wherever they turn, there's somebody there to support them for that particular need and to uplift them. Yeah.
And, I've heard you say before, when somebody says, well, what does the kid need the most? You say time, right? You need to invest that time in that person.
Yeah.
That might be the thing that you feel like you have the least of, but but it's time. And like we were saying before, it's consistency. And maybe you're a retired person, that has a little more time now.
Come on.
We would love to have and all the wisdom and all the experience that our retirees have to bring to our kids. We would love to have them come, and not just at Southside, every school. But it's going to take to get to where we want to go, not just with the kids at Southside, but with the kids at Edwards Elementary and D.S. Johnson and it's going to take a massive number of people that are saying, you know what, I see the need and I'm willing to make this a priority. And I feel like as Christians in particular, you know, there's a scripture in Proverbs where it talks about if you ignore the cry of the poor, then your prayers will go unanswered, which is really strong language, right? But I feel like God does mean what he says, you know, and we need to own that. And I think, you know, loving our neighbor and caring for a kid in South Rocky Mount the way we would our own kid, you know, those kinds of principles, we have to really take ownership of that and really think that through. So thank you for your time, Breon. It's awesome always to talk to you.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for being with us today. We'll see you again next week on the Hope Changes Everything podcast.